I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be fucking sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And all the doubters, they're just young downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought.
I can tell you that 7 years after Freddie Gray, that was 2015, spring, April, May. This is 2022. Communities like Sandtown, all we saw then and now in terms of investment was a renovated Western District Police Station and a new funeral home. That's what West Baltimore got. A new police station and a new funeral home. What kind of optics are they? Was Freddie Gray any different than 1968 Baltimore riots? Dr. King's passing, killing, murder? This is the same?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think, well, first of all, people who are being violent and burning, that's, all that's the same. But the point is what was the cause and what were they attempting to register?
I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns.
I love you.
They deserve an ounce. It's
got next. And I'll be up.
It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. We are joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, the incomparable Charles Robinson. For years, I have referred to him as senior journalist and advisor to BeMoreNews.com and BlackUSA.News. Why? Probably because he's the only one that's willing to put up with me.
I don't know about put up with you, but I enjoy the conversations that we have and the ability to bring to the front sometimes my writings. When Donnie started all of these endeavors, I said, sometimes I need my voice to come out. And that's one of the reasons why I love coming on with Donnie.
Man, you look great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been interesting year. It's been a very what I would call a year of ups and downs. But you and I continue to do what we do.
Who did you look up to in 1974, 75 in media?
In media, well, first of all, it was Wiley Daniels, who was the first Black guy on television in Baltimore. But over that time, I marveled at his work. I actually met him when I was probably about 14 years old.
He lived around the corner from you, didn't he?
Yes, he lived around the corner from me, and I was delivering the Afro-American newspapers
to his house.
To his house. And what was funny about it was, it was my first week, and you usually get some training from a paper boy. I did not get my training from a paper boy, but rather a paper girl, and
Afro.
at the Afro.
I
And
learned of that.
yes, and part of that is that I was about the dollars. Let me just say that. I was like, dude, I'm 14 years old. I'm trying to go to junior high school, and I need some cash in my pocket because back in those days, Donnie, you had to actually pay to get on a bus to go to school.
But
And
hey, you're talking about 15 cents.
yeah, but let's put it this way. Multiply 15 times 5, and you realize you need about $10 a week just to go to school. And it wasn't like I went to school in my neighborhood. I went all the way across town to the east side. And,
Where?
I went to a place called Woodburn Junior High School. You would have known it as Chickapin because it changed its name. It's at Woodburn and the Alameda.
How did that happen?
Because part of how the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore, well, more so the city of Baltimore, got around the idea of desegregated schools. They said, you can go to any school you want to go to. So I made the decision to go to the east side.
How did you make the decision? You were 14 years old.
Well, Donnie, I had a lot of hobbies back then. And one of those was slot car racing cars. And there was a slot car racing facility at the Alameda Shopping Center. And
Are these the go-karts?
no. These are like little cars. They're 124-inch, and they run on tracks. I had a track, but there was this facility that actually had tracks where people run around. And the guys from my neighborhood, we were all into it, and we would go to this slot car racing track.
Is this like Hot Wheels?
No. These are racing cars, like motorized racing cars, but they're about this big. You remember the what were they called? Actually, HO racing cars. And so this was a real live, honest to goodness track where you could bring your car in and you got a controller, and you raced everybody on the planet who was there. And
were there any cheaters? Were there people who had
no need to cheat? The cheat was, can your car make the turn on the bank that was like this, that was like this, and and so we went there one weekend. And I was enthralled. My dad actually came along and he watched, and he rented a little car, and he also was out there. And the thing is that
you went there and you rented their vehicle.
You could rent. I had my own car, and and the thing is that
was this some West Side thing? You got your own car.
No. I mean they cost about, I think, like $3 or $5 to buy. And you remember
I always say it because P.M. Smith, I heard him say in a sermon this year that the West Side were, bougie.
I mean, we did what normal people did, what I would call normal. We played baseball, we played football, we learned how to play lacrosse. We did things that we thought were cool, we were unlike other folks. Now, let me just remind you, that side of East Baltimore was still very segregated. Woodburn was majority white when I went there. By the time I left, it was majority black. But and think about this, Donnie. Most of the kids who were coming to Woodburn were coming from the Kirk Avenue neighborhood.
I lived there.
Right. So where Kirk and 28th, okay, and going all the way up. This was a time when
it's like City College,
right, where City College is, and this was also a time when blacks had started moving into Northwood, which was if there was a similar dynamics going on, Northwood had a similar dynamics as we had on the west side of Baltimore.
Moving to Woodlawn.
Right. Well, people hadn't started moving to Woodlawn. Woodlawn was still white.
That's right.
Like this would have been, think Forest Park. Forest Park was the Black promised land, you know, at that point. You know, Jewish folks had started to move out of there. And this unique time in the history of Baltimore was when a guy named who was running for governor called Mahoney had put out a slogan said, your home is your castle, i.e., I can kill you if you happen to step on my lawn. And that's how Spiro Agnew became the governor of the state of Maryland. And but anyway, the reason why I went there was because of slot cars. And the interesting part about it was my first year, I was on something called shifts. So the incoming 7th graders, there was too many kids in the school. So my 7th grade class went to school, get this, Donnie, from 10:30 to 4:30. And there was an earlier shift that went from 7 a.m. to 3:30. There was not enough space for individuals to do gym. So I didn't have gym for my first year. But it was the very first time I actually had a cafeteria. I went to Robert W. Coleman. And for lunch, I came home for lunch every day. And it was the first time that I ever had a cafeteria.
Robert Coleman in between Mondawmin and Douglas.
No, not that one. The original Mondawmin. The Mondawmin that's at the corner of Smallwood and Walbrook. It is now a senior center.
That was Robert Coleman, right there by Herbert Street.
Right at Herbert Street. Exactly. That's where I went to elementary school.
Back in your day, did Herbert Street have people who had a reputation for whipping hind parts?
That's an understatement.
Okay, so the reputation of Herbert Street is real.
Hey, look, let me just say,
I never had no problem there. I kind of knew some people, but
I knew some people too.
One of the little alley streets.
I am not a fan to tell people this, but by the time I got to junior high school, you know, it was all about little girls and parties. And I went to a party, and a guy who I knew who lived on Herbert Street pulled a knife on me. And that's why I hate Mount Street to this day.
Mount Street or Herbert Street?
Mount Street. He was from Herbert Street.
But this happened on Mount Street.
It happened on Mount Street at a girl's party. That's why I hate Mount Street to this day. But that's not why you got me here, man. Let's get to what we go to.
I sold newspapers on Mount Street to Morton and Diet.
Morton and Diet is, yeah. I here's that bizarre thing. I actually was the first lifeguard at
Maccabees
at the corner. What's the swimming pool at the end of the projects there?
Maccabees.
Yeah, Maccabees. Yeah, I was first lifeguard there.
You was a lifeguard in the projects?
Oh, you don't even. That's a whole nother story.
They gave you the blues?
Oh no. They made my eyes open up, and I was like, oh hell. That's another story.
Black Hawk Down.
No, it was worse than that, man.
Okay. This is the end of 2022, and as always, Dr. Robinson has.
Oh no, just Charles, man. You know how I go.
Charles Robinson has blessed us for the entire life of this news service with this end of year, and it's more than a top. It's more than a list. I would say this is folks, you're about to have an experience. And let me tell you, if you do not agree with this top 10 story list,
make up your own. And trust me, there are people who always argue with me about, Charles, where did you come up with this? Well, I thought you missed this, and I thought you missed that.
So
guess what?
can I give 3 free throws
Okay,
on what I know you gotta touch? I know it's on your list.
sure.
Okay. There's no way Westmore, Kanye West, and Deion Sanders.
I got 2 of them,
Okay. All right.
but that's okay.
Give me
That's
back
okay.
Deion. Get a put
You know what?
Kyrie Irving.
Well, here's that thing, Donnie. When you whittle it down to 10, some things get missed, and I get it.
Okay.
Because
It's 10. You
yeah,
can't pick
it's
everything.
10, not 12. In some years, I have actually had 2 number 5s, 2 number 3s, or something like that.
You've had a glorious. You've had you have wonderful lists, and they make us think. And like you said, if you don't like it, write your own. And I have found when I've written my own, you got to follow your own experiences. My list is not going to be your list.
Correct.
What caught my eye didn't catch your eye, and
Right.
it's okay. Just write your list, and it's not a competition.
No, it isn't. It
But
isn't.
when people come at you talking smack, then you tell them write their own, and it seems like a competition. Okay, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you, Donnie. This has been a very interesting year. I start off with this concept that there were too many narcissists this year, and I think you would agree with that. People who were self-absorbed with themselves and who they thought they were and how they thought they were. But you know what? There were a lot of underdogs, and you and I are fans of underdogs because they rise to heights that sometimes you're kind of shocked at.
Were narcissists ever underdogs?
Possibly, but today they are so self-absorbed, it's frightening in a sense that they, as I like to, in your parlance, it's don't believe the hype.
Well, speaking of rap lyrics, you blew my mind when you told me about Kendrick Lamar in Paris.
Yes, that was it. That was
because I've fallen in love with his music this year. I'm late to the game, but
I've been writing about Kendrick for a while. I remind folks he is profane, and for those who want to criticize him for his prolific use of profanity, it's deeper than that, I think.
Much deeper, I think.
Much deeper, much deeper. Hey, look, can I begin with number 10? So one of the people I talk about is a guy called Ye. You're thinking to yourself, Ye what? The guy who used to be called Kanye West. Let me begin with, I think Kanye has had his problems. He has had mental health issues. He's gone through a divorce. He's lost some endorsements. But probably the thing that got to me was I happened to be watching Saturday Night Live, and David Chappelle put it succinctly. He says, get this, when you use the term the Jews, bad things are about to happen to you. And that's what happened to Kanye when he basically said to Jewish folks, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on you. Now, don't get me wrong. You're welcome to say whatever you want. But guess what? The blowback was intense. He got kicked off of every social media possible. Then probably the thing that really, I know you said, what is this boy thinking? He trots out in a White Lives Matter t-shirt with Candace Owens.
Why?
I don't know why. Hell, that's why Ye is number 10 on my list, because there are some things, and don't get me wrong, he's always looking for attention. And you and I kind of go, do you need more attention at this point? You know,
It's almost like he's in a parallel universe.
well, I think he
Like
also,
over there, it makes sense.
right.
You know you can't say it over here, but you say it over here because you want to distract people over there to this world of, I don't know, it's another reality or something.
Well, you know, he is, you know,
But
last,
nobody makes money to lose money.
right.
That's
That's
the part
true.
I don't get. You work
Right,
so
but-
hard to build your money up, only to throw it away. Or was making a point worth it, whatever
Right.
his point is, because I don't get the point, especially with the t-shirt.
Well, here's the thing, Donnie. I have unfortunately seen over maybe the last 15 years, rappers specifically, they have become this idea in their head. I sell so many records, I have so many fans
Come on,
that
say
I
it.
will tell you what the culture is. And you and I both know being a rapper does not give you a PhD.
Malcolm X said entertainers are not our leaders.
In addition to that, a rhyme scheme is not a master's thesis.
KRS recently said how, I caught him on a video, I don't know how old it was, but I believe it was rather recent, the significance of hip hop culture. And I buy a lot of it, but that's not the total description of Black people.
Last time I checked, in order to get a PhD, you have to read a book and you have to study. And you and
He's
I
well
both,
studied. I just
and
know
you have to write. You can't just, I'm gonna spit some lines. I'm
I
gonna tell
think
you.
he's got more to spit some lines, but I don't buy that Black America is equal to hip hop. I think it's a part of Black America.
Yeah,
but
that's what it is. It's
it's a part.
it's a segment
Yeah.
within a much larger culture. If you think about it,
But if you're going to represent me,
then the last time I checked, Donnie, did you vote for any of these people? No, you didn't. I didn't. And they ain't been on anybody's ballot to verify that somehow that their validity is based off of something more than just a crowd that can repeat back your lines.
Well, you know, as you're talking, and some may disagree with me, I still say the one who's been able to navigate that music industry the best has been Jay-Z.
But I remind you, JD, I don't know if he does, but I don't even think he has a high school education.
He's a business.
Yeah, I heard what he said. I'm a businessman. But let's put it this way. I enjoy Jay-Z's music. I find him fascinating. I find what he does.
When he steps into politics, that the line.
He learned long time ago. My business is music business and things that come from it. But
when he steps into the political, that's when the ball stops, because it stops there. You cannot think for me politically. I don't care who you are.
Right. Let's go to number 9, if you don't mind.
Let's go.
Because one of the things that you and I have talked about off camera a lot is issues in the African continent. People think Africa is one country, and you know it is multiple
54.
countries. Probably the thing that I've been writing about most in the last 3 years is Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray. For those of you who want to find this on a map, it is on the western coast of the African continent, near the Red Sea. There are a number of issues that are going on. First of all, Ethiopia went through a terrible, if you will, civil war with Eritrea.
Caused by who?
You know, it's ethnic strife, and that's the only way.
I thought it had some European intervention over there.
Well, they in the early years, Ethiopia was controlled by Italy, and for those of you,
Invaded a couple of
yeah,
years by Mussolini.
yeah, by Mussolini, and that's when Haile Selassie comes to power. You know Haile Selassie because of Bob Marley. Haile Selassie came to Jamaica, and Bob Marley was inspired by him.
So
And
let's
that-
just make it clear. They were occupied briefly
Yes.
by Mussolini,
yes,
but they were never colonized.
no, they were
Not
never.
that imperialism has not seeped into Ethiopia, but what most of us Afrocentrics are proud of is that Ethiopia was never colonized.
Never colonized.
And I would say it's the only country that wasn't. Others will argue about Liberia and Sierra Leone,
Sure,
but they're
But
colonies.
they were never colonized. So in the
They
modern
are
world,
colonies.
yeah, in the modern world, when I say the modern world, I'm talking 20th century onward. The country was faced with famine, and unfortunately, it meant that there were haves and have-nots, and so the Eritrean government, the Eritreans who are in the northern portion of Ethiopia, asked for the ability to create their own country. Like I said, they went through a civil war, and the two presidents of those countries, I actually awarded them not the Nobel Peace Prize, but they won the Nobel Peace Prize for ending the conflict. And I named them as my person of the year. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, the country continued to have ethnic strife in an area called Tigray, which is just north of Ethiopia, in between Eritrea and Ethiopia. This
They
conflict,
say mean things. We have a young lady that has come on this show, and when certain folks from that region see her, man, the comments are vicious, bro.
oh yeah,
It's vicious. She doesn't know Ethiopia. She ain't representing us.
Mhm.
It is so ugly. You know,
Well,
it's nothing more difficult than meeting who I think is an Ethiopian and say Indemina to them and Diminish, and they look at you like, and you know, damn, they from Eritrea.
Eritrea. Make sure you say it right. It's Eritrea.
They ain't from Ethiopia. They don't like you not speaking their language, and
Right.
they don't like you miscalling their language. Oh,
Right. But here's that thing. This year in South Africa, the warring parties got together and they came up with a truce, and it stopped the fighting temporarily. But there's so many refugees, and just
South Africa.
yeah, they went to South Africa under the African Union to create this truce to stop the fighting. There was a second meeting with the African Union in Kenya, and they are continuing this process. This is a slow process. But here's that thing, Donnie, and you know this because you have been to Africa. Governing African countries is tenuous. And what I mean by that is that strong men, strong women, and others don't see it to their benefit without conflict. I could point to several countries.
I can point to East and West Baltimore.
No.
Somebody likes this. Somebody likes this mayhem.
Right.
You're not going to tell me
in the
otherwise.
African continent, you can
Keep
look
them
at
divided, and meanwhile, we can come in the back door, pay this person off. Man, some of the natural resources in the ground that go into making computer chips, hard drives, everything we use in the West
right,
comes right out of the ground in Africa, and that's the reason for the fighting.
right. Well, think
Natural
about this.
resources.
It's places like Zimbabwe, it's places like Chad, Angola, and of course the Congo, where a lot of people don't realize blood diamonds come from.
Yeah, King Leopold, the Belgian.
Yes. And I pray for Africa and hope that in 2023 that life is not so cheap and that those who are warring will put down their arms.
No, that's not happening. Something comes to mind as you talk about Africa. I alluded to East and West Baltimore. Tell me, if you will, for a second, the correlation between nonprofits that rake in millions of dollars that are supposed to go to helping to change East and West Baltimore to NGOs that are supposed to be helping in Africa. Is there a correlation between nonprofits and non-governmental organizations, NGOs?
Well,
Are they poverty pimps?
So our good friend Davon Love and Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. They have been making this a prime issue for years. I have tried to assist in trying them to get them to that point where they aren't just those are those dudes who make a lot of noise. They make more than noise. They make solid progress on the ground. And I know in your neighborhood, unfortunately, there's just too many people who think that, we can do whatever we want. And I think that's unfortunate. But, there is this idea that if only those poor Black folks, and you've heard this term before, could get their S together. And so, but anyway.
We hope Africa gets its stuff together. It's kind of hard to do when you have people who are easily corruptible, people on the outside who are willing to do the corrupting, lack of infrastructure. You got people meddling, signifying. And if Africa continues to stand up for itself, then others will see the worthiness of investing in Africa. I mean, to his credit, Eddie Brown has an African investment fund.
And you'd be stupid not to have one because there's money to be made if you are of that ilk.
Thank you for bringing Africa to the forefront.
Well, let me go to number 8, the loss of iconic figures. Donnie, you and I have lost friends this past year. And
thank God we still here, babe.
Yeah. And here's that interesting part about it. Sidney Poitier was one of those transformative figures. A lot of people talk about lilies of the field, and that's a cool idea. But
I like his book, Measure of a Man. It's insightful.
Right. To give you an example, my favorite line from Sidney Poitier, "They call me Mr. Tibbs."
That was iconic. I remember he was at dinner with the white girl. What happened at that dinner with the white girl?
Well, guess who's coming to dinner?
Guess who's coming to dinner?
It was great, but probably the thing that warmed my heart the most, and Donnie will more than likely post this too, was an image of a billboard coming into Baltimore. And it said, "To serve with love." and it stopped me. I literally stopped on the highway when I saw that billboard.
Was it that that his family had Caribbean roots that helped him to stand out from other Black actors?
No, I think it was, we talk about foundational fortitude.
I mean, because he had every reason not to succeed.
Right. And
In
the
America.
thing is that, Donnie, sometimes you need someone to ground your butt. And Sidney would ground Black actors and actresses.
He wouldn't let them use racism as an excuse.
Not just that, it's the proverbial get it together. There is a story that Oprah Winfrey told about Jamie Foxx, who was on top of the world after he did Ray. And Jamie was out there drinking and having fun and doing whatever. And Oprah calls him on the phone and says, "You need to get your shit together." He says, "I want you to meet somebody." Oprah takes Fox to meet Sidney Poitier.
Well, they need to take him again because I don't appreciate these damn sports betting commercials.
You and me both. But here's that thing.
Good for Oprah. Oprah gets some mad points this year.
Well, the thing is that sometimes,
From Dr.
think about meeting. If I were to take you to a dinner with Sidney Poitier, first of all, your mouth would drop. I know my mouth would have dropped. I would have said, "Shit, I'm sitting here with Sidney Poitier." I mean, think about all the movies and stuff. But he also did something else. He was also at the March on Washington. Harry Belafonte brought him.
Yeah. I mean, please bring in the Harry Belafonte connection.
Right. Harry Belafonte was actually up for many of the roles that Sidney took. And they were kind of in that, and they were of the same age, and they were in the same profession. Do you know that Harry Belafonte refused to do movies for 5 years? And people were still asking him if he would do one. I mean, probably the one that you and I love with Harry Belafonte is where he was the captain and had to take, what's her name? I can't even think of the...
Dorothy Dandridge.
Yeah, it took Dorothy Dandridge.
We don't forget her name.
Who was drop dead gorgeous. and the thing is that, as an actor, you have to pick and choose. Not everybody wants to be step and fetch it. And, and sometimes you have to turn it.
You brought home how Denzel, this is what I'm thinking. Denzel has a great reputation for not taking less than roles.
Yes.
But he that is built on the backs of people like Harry Belafonte or Sidney Poitier.
Right, exactly. Because, what's that line? You will fall for, if you fall
if you
for...
don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Right, that's pretty much it, man. But let me also say this. There were a number of people, unfortunately, who left us. Probably you and I know the greatest soccer player of all time died yesterday. Pele. Let me begin with, if you have never seen a bicycle kick, watch it. It is the most... The first time I saw it, I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, think about it. You are facing your back to the goal. You must go up in the air straight. And then you must kick 2 feet to put the ball in the goal. Donnie, I had never, ever, ever seen anybody do that. If Muhammad Ali was a citizen of the world, his brother was Pele. I don't know. There is a famous photograph of Ali and Pele together. But, I mean, there were others as well. First of all, I don't know how much you are a fan of him, but I am a big fan of his work. Was the late Charles Fuller, who wrote A Soldier's Play, which was one of the most groundbreaking both plays and films. Of course, there are others. I'm a big fan of this lady. She was married to Miles Davis. Her name was Betty Davis. You know, a friend of mine told me about a concert he went to see, and afterwards at Hampton University, and the academic provost said, "You are not allowed to bring that lady back here again." Of course, there are others as well. My good friend Bernard Shaw.
Let's slow down because I'm a little slow. Betty Davis,
Betty Davis.
the black Betty Davis.
There's only one Betty Davis, in my opinion, and that is Miles Davis's ex-wife.
What did she do? She was a singer.
She was a black rock singer. Her song was "If I'm in Luck, I Might Get Picked Up." She got a guy who had just left a band called Sly and the Family Stone to be her musical mentor. You know him as Larry Graham, the bass player. But anyway, then of course there's Bernard Shaw. Donnie, if I am your mentor, he was my mentor back in the day when we sat in an airport in LA and we just had a conversation. You can find Bernard Shaw, guess what? At a bar at Tacoma Station Jazz Club. And he was the dude sitting at the bar and nobody knew he was the anchor at CNN.
That's a black hangout.
That is a black hangout. To give you an example, and what really endeared me to him, remember when they started bombing in Baghdad? It was Bernard Shaw underneath a table doing live reporting. I told my wife, I want to go to the war zone. What do you think my wife said, Donnie?
How much does it pay?
No, she said, Charles, you got children. You can't go to a war zone. But then, of course,
I got to throw this in. This is a great time. As you were looking up to Wiley Daniels, Brian Gumble is who fascinated me on the Today Show.
There are, I've said this over time that you never know who's watching.
I love Brian Gumble. I don't care what nobody said. I admired this black man navigating the Today Show, Barbara Walters. The show that caught my mind, that caught my attention the most was Brian Gumble in Cuba.
Yeah.
And it was a live set, and it was a black man playing the piano, and I'd never seen images of Cuba before.
Right.
Look beautiful.
Oh,
You've been to Cuba since then.
So look, I want to mention two other major iconic figures. Andre Leon Talley, who was this fashion icon. Our good friend Kevin Brown.
See, that's why your list ain't fair. You just go, now who?
Andre Leon Talley. He is a fashion icon. To give an example, he had a degree in French literature. He was sent to Paris and became the Vogue fashion editor there. Understand this. If you thought your stuff was good, you took it to Andre Leon Talley, and he would tell you rhyme and verse why it worked or why it didn't work. I had a chance to talk to our good friend Kevin Brown about Andre Leon Talley, and he was incredibly effusive about his work. Understand, he was the only black editor at Vogue. Let me say that again. He was the only black editor at Vogue.
Okay, well, does that say something as much as it says about his greatness? Does that make Vogue great, or does it make Vogue not great?
It doesn't necessarily make Vogue great because Andre Talley was beyond Vogue. And what
really? And that's what I want to hold up on. Who made Vogue the standard?
These old white women.
Oh.
And these old white women decided to bring him
and they know fashion.
Right. And they brought him into a tent. Probably the thing that I was shocked with was there was a fashion show at the Palace of Versailles. Now, most people would have said, okay, Paris, fashion, Versailles. You know what Leon Talley did? He connected it to French literature. I was like, damn, the man knows French literature. And why those fashions work. He was also the first person.
And we can say that France had a better idea of fashion, say, than
No. Understand this, Donnie. There are centers like you would say New York is the center of media because a lot of folks are there.
Business
And businesses there. Paris is a unique place. It is a center for, where fashion not only gets created, but is used. But what I thought was interesting about Leon Talley
you left out something. Come on.
Is that he saw a young Black woman by the name of Naomi Campbell, and he made a decision to put her on the cover of Paris Vogue because they wouldn't put her on Vogue in the United States. And that makes him unique. But those were just some iconic figures.
I just want to throw this in there. It's not as if, and I want to do some education here, that Blacks have not been profoundly influential on Europe.
That's true. That's true.
Unbeknownst to many of us, there was a time when Blacks had major influence across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I wanted to say.
But probably the person who we lost this year that you will fondly remember is Max Julien for the Mac. Remember the line from the Mac? Goldie, Goldie. Wow, it exploited that whole era of, pimps and hoes. What I thought was fascinating about Max Julien.
Did you just say hoes on this show?
Yes, I just said hoes on your show.
A little risque, Charles. Okay.
Is that Max Julien used his own money to make that film. And he took that. He wrote it. He starred in it. And the thing that probably, if you want to go back and look at some of his work, there's a movie called Thomasina, and I'm drawing a blank right now, that he made with this young Black star. And there were, understand that during the Blaxploitation period, it was this explosion of, if you will, Black themed ideas.
So he had the Mac, he had Thomasine and Bushrod.
That's the one you want to watch. Thomasina and Bushrod. Thomasina and Bushrod. The simple idea behind the movie was there are two people who meet in the West, and they become what people commonly refer to as the Black Bonnie and Clyde. It is a tour de force performance by both those actors. But missing Max Julien, when I went to college, I would yell Goldie, and all my white friends, well, who the hell is Goldie? If you didn't know anything about the Mac.
What did they say about you in college? Were you where'd you go?
I went to Virginia Commonwealth University.
And how did they receive your Baltimore self?
They thought I was strange. They thought, I actually had someone said, well, Charles is gay. I was like, where the hell did you get that one from? and he's like, Charles gay? No, Charles is different. And that is part of what I brought to when I came to Virginia Commonwealth. I was, like you, I was never satisfied. I thought.
Were you afraid in Richmond?
No.
I saw that tall tree downtown by the courthouse when I was down there with you. And I was ready. Richmond was a sundown town for me. I had to get up out of there.
No, I understand this. My relatives are there. And I understood.
That could have been a.
I understood what the normalities, if you will, of the town were. But I once again was not prepared to give in. And I think that's
I saw
always
that tree, Charles. I saw that tree downtown at the courthouse, and it looked like they were lynching people. It looked like it was blood still on the tree.
Oh yeah. I drove past that. Drove past it every day.
That's the capital of the Confederacy.
It is the capital of the Confederacy. But and you will see a thread of those who are resilient that say, I am not satisfied. But look, I want to get to number 7, because guess what? It's the Jackson water crisis. Donnie, you remember Flint, Michigan.
Where Jackson State is.
Where Jackson State is, right.
Something Neon Dion brought to the light.
He wasn't the only one, but a lot of people. Our good friend Troy Johnson works there. And he and I have had a number of conversations about Jackson, Mississippi.
Troy Johnson from Big Fat Morning Show.
Correct. And now is an anchor in Jackson, Mississippi.
Well, he got some good training here in Baltimore. We spanked his butt.
I want to draw attention to Mayor Chihuahua.
So both Troy Johnson and Mark Clark transitioned from radio to television.
And I don't want to tell you that I told them to do that, but we're on a screen right now. Donnie, I think I told you to do the same thing.
You didn't tell me not to.
Right. But anyway, the mayor of Jackson, this has been a problem for years. I think it's disingenuous when people say a black mayor squandered money. No, what you did was you starved a city of resources.
Oh, like East and West Baltimore.
Well, whatever you want to say. But I'm just telling you that this problem was exacerbated this summer. You remember there were a number of floods there, and that's when Dion and others
started making noise.
They said, look, this is unacceptable. And that the governor of the state of Mississippi, who happens to be a white Republican, was like, well, we're not going to give y'all no money. So he was shocked when the Fed stepped in and started to give them money to repair some things.
So for those that don't know, we're talking about the basin of the Mississippi Delta.
Correct. And Jackson, Mississippi is the state capital.
And this is one of the poorest regions in America.
Not just the poorest regions. The state has starved Black communities within the state of finances in favor of service. So, unfortunately, it is a commonality, unfortunately, across this country. The other thing that made me, silent, there was a freeze this last week. And guess what? They're back to ground zero. They've got to they can't figure out where the leaks are coming from. So that was number 7. How about number 6? Screens and what I watched. First of all, Donnie, I don't know about you. I'm not a fan of going to big movie theaters these days because I have underlying health conditions. But I went to.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because you got Fire Stick.
And one of them was. So I went to see Wakanda Forever. Let me begin with, this movie tied up what happened to Chadwick Boseman, not only on the screen, but as the character of the Black Panther. I happened to be in Las Vegas this summer and had a chance to talk with one of the producers, and the question was asked, will the Black Panther be replaced? They didn't want to say it at the time, but this film answers that question. Probably the thing that really a lot of people didn't see coming was this new character called Prince Namor commonly referred to as the Submariner. Now, if you've been reading the comic books for like I have for years, the Submariner and the Black Panther are arch rivals. So I was like, oh, they're going to bring this guy back. And the fact that they brought him back as an Aztec warrior, let me just say, it brought in a whole lot of money because a number of
Just the
our
Latino community.
our Latino community saw themselves as a superhero on the screen. And you know they're going to have a separate movie about him. But probably the thing that
So,
warmed my
so
heart.
let me get this straight. While there has never been this type of interest in Black comics, Latino comics historically, because of racism,
Yes.
money changes all of that.
And
So it really puts an exclamation mark on racism, how stupid it is that people hold on to these ridiculous notions and still don't make money in the process. So at least the racists are getting a little smarter, right?
well, I don't know if they're getting smarter, but I can tell you this.
They've been missing money.
You've got to reimagine a new world. Remind yourself, all of this is fiction.
Are
You know,
there any Black heroes? Because
Yes.
my understanding of the first Black Panther is that there was a white hero.
No, he wasn't a white hero. He never
Sure.
been. No, I can tell you because I got the comic. I actually have the comic book where he first shows up, and he's fighting the Fantastic Four, and he's kicking their butts. And at the end, they ask, "Well, who are you?" And he pulls off his mask, and it's this Black Prince of this fictional world called Wakanda. I mean, think about this, Donnie. You and I know people who believe that, well, Wakanda is right around the corner. And unfortunately,
Now
you
walk
know,
on is right here in this house.
right. Well, that's what I'm saying. That it becomes this realization of a world you wish you had. And the fact that all these folks and it's based in Africa, people are going to maps looking for Wakanda. I said that place doesn't exist. But
If you got Black people to look at a map of Africa, then that's a good thing.
that
But we
is a good
should
thing.
already be looking at maps of Africa.
Right. But that is just one. The other thing I want to talk about is the women who were the stars of this movie. From Angela Bassett to the woman who plays Shuri. I can't wait to see what all these sequels. To give an example, I'm watching this movie and go, oh, they're gonna make a sequel about him, her, and her. Let me just say this: Marvel Comics is gonna make a ton of money.
Tell me
You know.
about Viola Davis.
Viola Davis's performance. She had known Chadwick before the Wakanda series started. And the fact that she becomes the queen of Wakanda. I heard the theater I was in, of course, I heard a lot of claps for that, because Black people will talk to the movie screen, go on, girl. And probably that in itself is
And this is the Denzel thing.
yeah, she was
That's
right. And I believe she helped Chad with Denzel go to a European conference when he was at Howard.
So big ups to Denzel.
Not only that, so while I was in Las Vegas, part of the magic of Disney is its animation stuff, right? So they had the new head of ABC announced at this event I was at that they were going to start an animation school at Howard University. It is the first animation school on the East Coast. And guess what? It's not only going to attract Black folks, which I hope it attracts a lot of young Black people, but it's going to attract some white folks too.
This is in Florida?
No, this is how I was
In Howard?
They're going to start this school at Howard University.
Is
That
something
is
similar going on in Florida? Black
well,
film.
Disney has a facility for animation in Florida, but this is the first time they're going to put it at HBCU. That is astounding.
What do you
But
say about HBCUs these days? More momentum. I look at Dr. Wilson at Morgan State University. We look at what Neon Dion has done with Jackson State. Now Ed Reed has taken on an HBCU. I mean, that's on the back of a Robert Smith, an Oprah, using their philanthropic.
you want to add numbers to my list.
I tried, Charles.
I know you tried, but look, here's another thing. That wasn't the only thing I saw on the big screen. I saw a film called Nope, which was by Jordan Peele. And Jordan Peele has been on this unique kind of role with horror movies. Let me just say this. Not everybody got Nope. Some people hated Nope.
I watched Nope. I watched the whole thing.
I like Nope. And let me tell you the thing that a lot of
It
people
made me think it was
different.
it was different, and I didn't mind the scary. At my age, I don't want too scary stuff. Like the scariest thing I ever saw was Blackula around 1973 when that chick got up off that table. And remember, my dad had a funeral home.
Oh,
so,
you was like, oh God.
Yeah, I was weirded out. Leave the light on for a week.
Right.
That was scary.
Right. Well, let me suggest that there were a lot of homages in that film. It opens with the kind of small animated film of a black cowboy, and a lot of people didn't get that. They didn't go, "What's that about?" And that was this idea of how to draw you in. But probably the thing, and I don't want to give everything away, I'm gonna tell you. I did not expect that alien to look like that.
I don't remember what it looked like, but I remember it was taking, and I'm not going to watch something that doesn't pull me in. But Charles, you are the Annapolis reporter, Maryland Public Television, and I don't recall anything on this list thus far that touches your 9 to 5 politics.
I do have some things. So real quickly, I want you to go watch a movie called Lightyear. You know, the animated character called Buzz Lightyear. You probably heard him say, "To infinity and beyond." You won't guess where that came from.
Twitter.
I don't want to give everything away. I want you to watch it so you can find out that. All right, I'll give part of it away. The line comes from a black woman who was friends with Buzz Lightyear, and that blew me away. The other one is real quick. You know, I watched a lot of things on a small screen. One of those was, first of all, if you aren't watching Abbott Elementary, you should watch Abbott Elementary. In addition to that, watch a show called The Upshaws. For the first time in a while, these two shows put together smart and funny, which I just thoroughly enjoyed. Lastly, you know, my office did create 2 pieces this year that were unprecedented. We looked at Harriet Tubman and we looked at Frederick Douglass. They're documentaries. One is, let me make sure I get it right. You know, I'm sorry, Donnie, my brain is fried because you got me up early in the morning. The first is Becoming Frederick Douglass, and the other is Harriet Tubman, Visions of Freedom. You can watch that online. Please revisit both of those. My good friend Stanley Nelson was the director on it, and I recommended Stanley for this job because I felt like he was the only one who could do that. But the thing I know you really want to talk about is number 5, gun violence.
Why haven't they locked up Donald Trump?
I don't want to hear about Donald Trump. If you notice, I haven't mentioned Donald Trump in any of these. 1, gun violence. Donnie, you and I know that there is carnage in the street. It is.
Did you know that over half of the murder victims in America are black?
Yes, unfortunately, I have.
What?
And
What is that? What
so
the hell is
here's
that?
thing, Donnie. You have been reading my stuff for a long time. You know, unfortunately, I have always had, unfortunately, to write about gun violence. And you and I have talked about this. This is a mental health issue. What I want to remind folks is that if you have to fend for yourself, i.e., your mama's locked up, your daddy's locked up, your family is in disarray, it will take you down some dark places.
Now juxtapose that to the white mass killings.
Well, here's that thing about that.
Because the way I count
Hold on,
these
I'm trying to answer this question. My problem continues to be there are guns that are warlike, i.e., I can spray a room with 150 rounds in 5 minutes. Those are warlike weapons. Those aren't just weapons for protection. You know, last time I checked, how many rounds do you need to put in a Bambi? Because 150 rounds is not, that's not killing for sport.
Well, people like Mitch McConnell don't see it that way.
You know what? And that's why I mentioned this whole idea. Let's begin with getting rid of warlike weapons. I don't know if the country has the fortitude to do that. But
some people live with too much fear and guilt. Fear of what black people will do, and guilt, not because of the past, because of the ongoing redlining.
Donnie, here's that thing that I think, unfortunately, is that unique line that runs through both the murders, the carnage of group killings. It's what I call who gives a damn. And that is, I don't know if our compassion for each other helps solve that.
Nope.
But I know it begins with that. When
you watch Fox News Baltimore, everything is anti-Baltimore. But when these mass killings happen in suburban communities in white America, it's just, they say it, then it's gone. Mm-hmm. But every day, the narrative is about my community.
Right. Well, then you're going to like number 4, the GOP implosion. Donnie, how many times did folks tell you there's going to be a red wave? I don't remember. I think that wave was the wave that you see down at the Inner Harbor splashing on the wall. Probably the thing that kind of crystallizes this is a race you watch closely like I did. It was the runoff of the U.S. Georgia Senate race.
Oh, Herschel Walker's erection. That's what he said.
Here's that funny part about it. You were not amused, neither was I. And here's
I was embarrassed.
Not only embarrassed, but it became clear
that Harriet Tubman would have left him.
Not only left him, she probably would have shot him.
You put that 4.5 in him.
Right. But here's that thing. Donnie, I think we were all satisfied that Senator Warnock was able to win that race. But my takeaway from all of that was
they're coming again.
The members of the GOP in Georgia specifically were prepared to vote for someone who was unqualified.
That's racism. That's how stupid it is.
and they will vote for unqualified folks. So I'm tired of this. If only we had a qualified Black Republican.
Okay, tell me about the guy in South Carolina.
I'm dumbfounded right now. I don't know what you're
I
talking
think his
about.
name is Scott.
Oh, Tim Scott. Okay, all right, Senator Scott. Senator Scott.
Is he qualified? I know he pissed off some Black people like you. You see that look on your face?
Yeah.
Look at it. That look on your face says it all. That says it all.
Here's that thing. Like in Georgia, there were people who are prepared to vote because they see their interest in that vote. And unfortunately in South Carolina, that's a problem. And don't get me wrong, there's always been a strain of Black Republicans. You know, I knew them back when I was in elementary school. Some of them were, I would call, economic Republicans, i.e., I want to help some Black folks. I don't want to help all of them, but I want to help some Black folks.
Well, at least they're honest, because nothing's worse than a Black Democrat that pretends to want to help all Black people, but they're just elitists.
Right. But but the thing that is very interesting about Southern GOP members is what I call orthodoxy. Orthodoxy says vote against your interests. Vote against your interests.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's voting against your
interests. This doctrine no matter what.
Right. Vote against your interests.
And so there were Black men who supported the Republican efforts in Georgia.
Right.
Sadly.
And understand this, Donnie, and I can go back to pre-slavery, pre-Civil War. It's the slave who would say, you know, Donnie and Charles are going to leave tomorrow.
Drive snitching.
Yeah. And, you know, and I got an extra portion of grub. And they're going to move my wife to the big house. There's always been an underlying.
See, that's snitching.
Well, it's not just snitching, man. I call it
betrayal,
and this idea of the barrel and the crabs mentality. I can't let you get out because my circumstances will be worse.
And that's why Harriet Tubman carried that Colt 45. If you don't know, now you know.
Now you know. But probably the next one is number 3, was Black MAGA supporters. Now, Donnie, you have watched these rallies with the former president, and there's always one or two people sprinkled behind him. This is what?
A Black man with a baseball cap on there talking about MAGA.
MAGA and Black support Trump.
Yeah. Ye's army.
Well, I don't know if it's Ye's army. Let me just say these are Black MAGA supporters.
Well, Ye likes meeting with Trump, doesn't he?
Right, but I think you gotta kind of
bizarre.
Right. Well, guess what? So Black folks know what that's about.
What is it about?
What it's about is, see, I know some Black people. So part of the problem was the former administration was looking for folks who supported their ideas. So this guy by the name of Dr. Jerome Adams, he was the Surgeon General of the country under the Trump administration. Remember, he was the guy, let me show you how to make a mask. You remember he did that kind of that stunt, because that's what it was. It was a stunt. And then, of course, he leaves the administration. He's 2 years removed. And guess what, Donnie? He can't find a job. And not that I have anything against people marrying people of other races. His white wife has had cancer, and unfortunately, it has come back. There was an article in the Post about this that talked about what he called the Trump effect. Duh! You expect me to like you now because you're not in the administration, and yet you disavow all of this stuff. That ain't gonna happen. Because
Are you talking about the thing called karma?
karma and many other things. But here's my bigger question. Where is Omarosa?
Shopping, I would imagine.
Well, she claims she married
paid to
Michael
go away,
Eric
wasn't she?
Duncan. Married Michael Duncan. You remember the very big actor? And she won, and she got all of his money. And I think she's living in California, but she ain't the only one. That's always probably one of those weird things. But Donnie, probably my most controversial piece that I wrote in this is number 2, Black women in politics. Let me just say, this wasn't a good year for Black women in politics.
But Stacey Abrams is still a bad hombre, and she's the Fannie Lou Hamer of today. Big up, Stacey Abrams.
Well, it's not just her, it's Val Demings, and it's a lot of others. You and I
Stacey was like, she was the one coming through the middle, running that straight up the middle. I mean, she's tough road, big ups.
So I happened to be in Las Vegas, like I said, at a conference, and I go to this luncheon that was put on by the Center for American Women in Politics. Probably the most important thing was they documented the demise of Black women and other women in the political sphere. Donnie, you and I know Black women who could run for office, but will choose not to do that.
Because they're smart.
See, that is the wrong answer.
That's my answer. Who wants to put up with this crap from these?
That is part of the problem here, Donnie.
Racist people who, no matter what you do, it's never good enough.
Donnie,
I've seen it. And look at the mental anguish it causes so many of our brilliant Black people to go out there and try to be
Black women specifically. Because here's that thing, Donnie. There's not a bench. I have argued with members of the Maryland Democratic Party that if you don't get someone, a female, to run for Congress, Senate, the House of Delegates, or something
Angela
like that.
also Brooks.
Well, no, it's not just them. Those are people who have arrived.
But
you better get a bench. You better get a bench.
The problem is that I was just thinking today, and no slight, had Kurt Schmoke had someone to pass the ball to who was groomed, who knows, our trajectory could be still like DC, like Atlanta, but it got stymied because there was no succession plan. Kasim Reed was missing in action for a minute when it came to Keisha Bottoms getting elected in Atlanta. Almost some selfishness. We'd rather lose than pass the ball to our own brother or sister. We got to get over that.
Here are the numbers that should make you think. In 2022, Black women are 7.9% of the population, 4.9% in Congress, 5% in state office, and 2% in statewide offices.
You're saying there are more Black women?
No, there are fewer. Think about those numbers.
7.9.
Let me repeat them again. 4.9% in Congress, 5% in state offices, 2.6% in statewide offices. That means whatever influence you're having at the ballot isn't translating into your people being in office.
Is it better for white women?
No, not much better.
So,
And here's
I thought
that
you
thing
were-
that I think that most people don't realize very often. Let me tell you how black women are described in politics. Well, first of all, they're pushy. They're sassy. Get this.
those sound like
progressive.
Those are compliments. White women admire
Angry.
black women's
No,
ability to
no,
fight.
no, no,
Yes,
no.
they
These
do.
are codes. These are codes.
I know they're codes, but let me give you another code. Abortion. Women have been disrespected like never before in this country in 2022. Abortion.
Donnie, you and I have known April Ryan for a long time. You know, she's got a new book out called Black Women Will Save the World in Anthem. I was talking to her about this, and she said, absolutely, there are codes. Ryan also reminded me of this, something from Shirley Chisholm. She said she admonished people who would criticize why she was running. She says black women get a double whammy. In other words, they are created not just as second-class citizens, they're discounted. She describes this from another woman as misogyny noir. Do yourself a favor, Google misogyny noir, because it is a vicious term to describe why black women aren't qualified.
Why white people feel black women aren't qualified.
And it ain't just white people. It is black people too. It is not.
What noted black people feel black women aren't qualified?
You know, you can pick your favorite black Republican, or you can.
They're not with us,
right? But you can find examples. I'm not here to find that example for you.
Black women are admired for their beauty, their strength, and their courage.
Not
and when
everybody.
They love a black man,
not
they
everybody.
Love
Donnie. If I don't draw attention,
I can't care but so much about what white America thinks. I care more about what black America thinks of itself. If we think highly of ourselves, it won't matter what this person thinks.
Donnie, here's the thing that I took away.
It's like Facebook determining who our leaders are. It's laughable.
Here's the thing. Stacey Abrams and Val Demings are pros. I was privy to a number of conversations with these two ladies. And during those conversations, as I listened, they seemed to argue about past inequities. I just want to tell you, that was not a winning formula. To give an example, I want to point to Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles. Mayor Bass.
Congratulations, Mayor Bass.
Was able to use the problems with all those Latino folks who were disparaging black folks in Los Angeles to help her win. But what really put her over the top was she was the only candidate in Los Angeles that said, I am going to remove the homeless people in Los Angeles. That is thinking forward. That's not looking back. You could have looked back and said, I know this is a problem. She said, I have a solution to that problem. And I can tell you the winners of this particular midterm, we're all talking about the future. Think about Ralph Warnock. Senator Warnock was talking about the future. He wasn't talking about the past.
So what will, considering that we're going into 2023, what will mayoral candidates in Baltimore talk about fixing?
I don't know about fixing, but they got to talk about the future. In other words, they have to see a vision of Baltimore that's not encompassed with whatever the problems were in the past. You know, and I think I can speak with not degree of authority, but a a a timeline that will talk about those who were able to overcome whoever the incumbent was. We're talking about a future of Baltimore and the children of Baltimore. So look for anybody who's talking about the future of Baltimore and the children. And one of my friends doesn't call them children. You know what he calls them? He called them babies. Think about that. If I say, "What do you want for your baby?" People have a different perspective. If I say children, they mean, well, those are the children. No. I want to talk about the babies. And that is always going to be where politics is going. It is going into the future.
The one and only Charles Robinson, senior journalist, Maryland Public Television, past president, Regional National Association of Black Journalists, award-winning. Sir, we salute you.
Thank you. I got to get to number one, because if we don't get to number one, no one cares.
I thought that was number one.
That was not number one.
Okay.
Number one is Ketanji Brown Jackson. The newest Supreme Court justice. Donnie, I have heard what I would call bizarre arguments. And one of the most bizarre argument was, well, Ketanji Jackson Brown only has one vote on the Supreme Court. And I was like, yeah, but she's on the Supreme Court. This is the first time a Black woman has been on the Supreme Court. Now, I think a lot of people felt like, well, she'll be like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She won't say anything. Let me begin.
After all of the hell she went through, thanks to people like Clarence Thomas. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Well, anyway,
Clarence Sambo.
Here's that thing that
Uncle Tom was really a hero.
Here's that thing that always is interesting to me, especially with the Supreme Court. The way the court works is real simple. So you have a case. The participants provide you with written material. That material is gleaned. You ask your clerks to look up case law, i.e., tell me what are some of the precedents around this case law. Then you ask the clerks to put forth arguments, and then you, as the justice, take those arguments and glean an idea of how you want to rule. That then is circulated amongst the justices, and then you get what are called oral arguments. That's where you get to hear the thinking of the justices. So this year there was a gerrymandering case out of Alabama. And the reason why it was bought, because there was a new lines drawn where there weren't going to be any Black majority districts. Now understand, the conservatives on the court don't believe Black majority districts are legal. And they have been trying to tear at them for a while. So when this case,
white majority districts are legal.
Well, that's how they see it. They like the term, get this, colorblind. Okay.
Practice what you preach. Okay.
Anyway, so during this oral argument, there is the Alabama Solicitor General who tried to make the argument that the 14th and 15th Amendment was not done to help racial issues. Okay. In fact, he called it was colorblind. Okay. And as we like to say, Ketanji Jackson Brown pulled out a can of whoop ass, and she made the compelling argument back to him. He said, prior to the Civil War, whites had the power and they could dictate whatever. With the 14th and 15th Amendment, it was kind of like leveling the playing field, if you will. Okay? And she argues that it was about racial preference. And any argument, you better tell me what the argument is that it's not racial preference. Please listen to her excoriating questioning of the Alabama Solicitor General. Now, remind you, she will have only one vote. But recently, someone reminded me her argument on the record will be the argument if and when the Supreme Court flips to reverse all of these new conservative, if you will, rulings. And that is the number one story on Charles Black Politics.
How can people get in touch with you, Mr. Robinson?
Well, you can always follow me on Twitter at c3newsman.com. You can find the entire list on my blog page, which is blkpol.blogspot.com, or just Google Charles Black Politics.
My name's Donnie Glover. I'm the author of Unapologetically Black,
which I endorse.
And I Am Black Wall Street,
which I also endorse.
Publisher of BeMoreNews.com and BlackUSA.news, and a student of Charles Robinson. And I also hail from the same West Baltimore community, circa North and Bentlow. We call it Bacon Bentlow, but he at the top. Little bougie.
First of all, let me wish you and your listeners
and Pharaoh,
George and Pharaoh, my boy Pharaoh. I ain't seen Pharaoh in a while. You know, first of all, a festive holiday, and look forward to a new year where you can change the narrative if someone's written a narrative about you.
Power to the people. Good morning, world.